two of my foundational themes that I have that you probably picked up on if you follow my podcast is one, smart people know the right answers, brilliant people ask the right questions. To me, it's all about asking questions, which ties in to one of my second foundational principles. Let data drive decisions, not emotions. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome, 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 welcome. You know what time it is. Yes, it is. It's time. It is time. It is time for Life of a CISO with yours truly. Dr. E is in the house. As you know, I love asking questions. Right? I live my life on questions. Two of the guiding principles, two of my foundational themes that I have that you probably picked up on if you follow my podcast is one, smart people know the right answers, brilliant people ask the right questions. To me, it's all about asking questions, which ties in to one of my second foundational principles. Let data drive decisions, not emotions. Now, emotions absolutely should be part of coming up with possible options, right? Because our emotions are good, right? They're going to let us think of, okay, what option should we do? Get us creative. So emotions are great for creativity, for coming up with the potential solutions. But then when we're ultimately trying to solve the problem, let's go back to the data, or let's go back to a question and ask ourselves, is this really solving the problem? And I'll give you a bonus. My third key driver in everything is root cause. Let's treat the problem, not the symptom. I've given talks on painkiller security, or I think a lot of security is about Band-Aids and aspirin. Now don't get me wrong. Nothing wrong with Band-Aids and aspirin. Right? You want to relieve some of the pain or the inflammation. You want to stop the bleeding. You want to stop infection or things like that. That's all good. But we need to step back and say, what was the root cause? What is causing this problem or this issue? And I think that's something in every area of life, but especially as chief officers focused on information security. We tend to get so pulled in to the reactionary, the day-to-day, the putting out the fires, that we step back and say, are we really solving the root cause? Are we really fixing the problem? Or are we just putting a Band-Aid on it and it's going to potentially get worse and worse? What I want to talk about today is a different question. The question I want to bring up is, who's in charge? Who's in control? Right? Who's really running the show? Right? There was a show growing up. I don't know why it popped into my head when I said that, but it was Charles in Charge. Right? And the idea behind it was that it was a family, and there was a person who was taking care of the kids and taking care of the house. And the reality is, this person, Charles, who was, I think, 20 or 22 years old, was really running the household. It wasn't the parents. It wasn't the kids. Right? It was this 22-year-old that they hired and brought in, and they only knew for a couple of months. And I sort of look at that going, did they even realize that? Is that really what you want? Do you want somebody else in charge of your life and your kids? It's sort of an interesting question. Now, I'm not here to talk about 80s TV shows or Charles in Charge. I'm talking about who's in charge of your life. And we could do this at many levels, but because this is about being a chief officer focused on information security, I ask you, as your role as that CISO, when you wake up in the morning and you sort of put on the CISO hat, and here's the first question. During your day, when do you start and when do you stop being a CISO? Or are you actually a CISO 24/7? Are you actually on call or thinking about or sort of being a CISO 24/7? Because we talk about this life-work balance and like returning to the office is getting huge push and publicity. I put some blogs on that. I won't get into that too much here. I can't make promises. I'll sometimes go off on tangents. But everyone's making a big stake of, we can't go back. We got to work from home because work-life balance and all these things. But the reality is, when and how often are you really thinking about your job? Thinking about being a chief information security officer? Because here's what it comes down to. The more you focus on something, the more effective you can be at it. So if you're only going in and focusing on being a CISO at 8 in the morning when you get in the car and you start driving to work, some of you might be when you get up at 6, as soon as you look at your phone, you start checking work email. We all have different habits, different things. Some of us might even think about or dream about work, right? Or talk about work at home or after hours. But it's, once again, this is not judgment here. I just want to be clear. Being a world-class CISO is about awareness. Well, what I try to do with my coaching, with my one-on-one folks, is I'm not going in and trying to judge you. I'm not going in and trying to change you. I'm not going in and trying to tell you what you need to do. What I'm trying to do is raise awareness. Because if you can see reality, if you can see the problem for what it really is, if you can see your job as a CISO for what it really is, the truth, not the emotions we put around it, not the false beliefs we've developed around it, but the absolute truth, you'll then be able to see the solution. Because here's the reality. The solution to any problem, if you want to become a CISO, if you want to become a more effective CISO, if you want to get promoted to a CISO of a Fortune 50 company, the path, the solution, how to do that, you know how to do. It's already inside you. You actually know how to do it. But it's buried and covered up with so many other thoughts, limiting beliefs, identities, and others that you're not able to see it. And that's the thing why, in a lot of cases, when we try to get help or we try to get coaching, it fails or it frustrates us because we're trying to go into the coaching, we're trying to go to an event for somebody else to give us the answer. Somebody else to tell us what to do. And you sort of have two groups. In some cases, that gives you new ideas, that sparks things inside of you going, oh, great, or it gives you new information, and it gets you down that path. Other people are frustrated because they're like, you didn't tell me what to do. But the job of teaching or training is to teach you new skills. The job of a coach, when I coach people, it's to help you be able to be the best version of you, the best CISO you can possibly be. And that can only be done by you being aware. If I just go in and I tell you, do this, do that, it might work. But you're then dependent on me. You're not able to be independent. And we sort of talk about analogies in sports. Good quarterbacks can run plays. Great quarterbacks can actually read plays and make a decision of which option to choose. So a good quarterback, the coach is going to give them a simple play. if we just stick with football, roll back and throw to person X. That's what a good quarterback does. They have the skills and they're focused on the ability. The focus to actually focus, concentrate, step back, throw the ball with accuracy and the mechanics. They're not focused on strategy, they're focused just purely on the mechanics. Then a great quarterback, the coach will give them options. They'll still give them the play, but they'll go in and say, okay, go back and look at person A or person B. Decide which one is open and throw to that person. So they're still given the strategy, but they're involved in deciding. They get to make a decision as part of it. And then amazing, brilliant, the best in the business quarterbacks can do audibles at the line of scrimmage. They create and call their own plays because they're coming up and creating their own strategy. That's a world-class CISO. You need to come up and create your own strategy. I can give you a strategy, but it's not going to make you amazing. It'll make you good or it'll make you great. And depending on where you are, I'll start. I'll start by giving you some strategy, but we want to get you to the point where you can actually come up with your own strategy. You can actually be aware of what's going on and what's happening. And it's only through awareness. So what I try to do is peel back the layers and let's get some factual data. Let's get some factual data. And the first thing I do is I want to know sort of what percent of your day are you focused on being a CISO? And it's an interesting question because some people come back and go, oh, I only work 8 to 5, I disconnect from work, blah, 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 which isn't really true. Or some people are like, oh, I'm always thinking about work, which isn't true either. So we just want to get awareness, just really start being aware of how much time are you really spending thinking about your job as a CISO, or thinking about your job as a security engineer, or thinking about what you need to do to become a CISO. And then the next question is that quality time? Are you actually focused on things that move the needle forward? Are you actually focused on things that are going to improve the process, or are you focused on sort of the past or frustration or why did that happen or why won't they include me in the meetings, blah, 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 blah. Bad use of your time. Why won't the executives include me in the meeting? Why won't they include me in the meeting? Blah, blah, blah. Well, they don't care about security or they don't this or they don't this or I'm not, blah, 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 blah. But what's a better question? What do I need to change so I'm now invited to the meetings? Right? Quality of your life as a CISO is directly tied to the quality of the questions you're willing to ask yourself. So if you ask yourself a bad question, like, why am I not invited? Why don't they include me? You're just focused on the problem. But if you go in and you switch it and say, what do I need to do differently? What do I need to change in order to be invited to those meetings? Everything shifts. Because now you're focused on solutions. So just start becoming aware. Not only how much time are you thinking about or spending on your job, but is that time quality time? When you're thinking about your job, when you're focused on your job, are you thinking about what needs to be improved and what changes you need to make? Or are you focused on the problem and what's wrong with everything and sort of pointing fingers or pointing blame? Which then takes us really to the theme of this podcast, which is the question: who is in control? Who is in control of your life? Who is in control when you're at work? So at work, let's just assume you work 8 to 5. And you can put in whatever breaks or lunch or things like that. But the reality is, and this is where I think we've sort of lost sight of things in sort of some of the work from home and work ethic and other stuff, is the reality is the agreement, the salary you were given was sort of based on the fact that you would dedicate 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours a day to your job. That there would be a certain number of hours that you would be dedicated to your job. And remember, this concept of work and salaries existed before there was cell phones, before there was email, before there was texting, before there was work from home. My first job, I did an intern at Northrop Grumman in Bethpage, Long Island. I worked on the radar system doing a security checking and validation for the radar system for the F-14D fighter jet. And I had to be there at 7:30 in the morning. That's when, because the traffic, it was a huge plant. We had a building where we were doing all the design and research analysis, but we actually connected to one of the hangars. So we would actually, as part of the job, sometimes during the day, have to go out and inspect the aircraft that was being built. Because if they were doing testing or validation on the aircraft and there were failures or things weren't working, we sometimes had to go in and sort of evaluate that so we could look at what changes or updates or improvements we needed to make to the software to either make it work functionality. And my thing was, any changes to functionality, how did that impact the security of those overall systems? So you had a lot of people working in that facility, and that would create huge traffic issues. So they actually had a schedule where each building actually started at a different time. So one group started at 7, another at 7:30, 8, 8:30, 9, this way to control and manage traffic. So you had to be there by 7:30. Right? That's sort of when it wasn't really shift work, because we were actually doing very high-end analysis and analytics, but still there were schedules that you had to sit by. I showed up at 7:30. When I drove to Bethpage, I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have a pager. What I had in the seat next to me was the maps. I don't know if you remember, there used to be sort of the thick maps where you go to the back, you could look up streets, and it would tell you the map and the grid, and then you'd have to go through and sort of plot and figure out, just in case, because sometimes with my job at Northrop Grumman, I sometimes had to go and pick up things or go to meetings, and those were new locations. I would just be given on a piece of paper, hey, go to this address for a meeting at 3 o'clock, and I have to sit in the car with the map and sort of figure out and plot out how to do that. But the reality is, those 30, 40 minutes when I drove to Bethpage, it was my time. I could either put on the radio, I could listen to talk shows, I could think, I could analyze, but I wasn't accessible. No one was able to get a hold of me. And then when I was at work, starting at 7:30, there was a desk phone. So if family or friends needed to call me, they could call and leave a message, and I would check it maybe every few hours or when the red light was blinking. And then if I had time, I would maybe call them back. But I spent a very small percent of my time at work talking, communicating with friends and family. Now just think of the contrast today. We want to talk about competitive workplace and quality of our work product and competitive nature. Just think today, how much time, and I'm guilty too, I'm not criticizing, I'm just raising awareness. How much of your time today are you focused at work, texting, communicating, emailing, phone calls, surfing the web? I would say a pretty good percent. Depending on who you are, how honest we are, it could be anywhere from 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 to 60%. So just think of the different quality of work factor of in the 80s, where people basically were at work and the only way you can get a hold of them was a phone on their desk. There wasn't constant texting or emailing versus today. Can we at least agree that there's a quality issue, a time issue, a factor issue, whatever you want to call it? right? Where now the level of distraction that we have at work is far greater than we've ever experienced, is far greater than we've ever seen. So then the question comes back to, when you're at work, and we'll just do 8 to 5. When you're at work from 8 to 5, and you're working, you're supposedly doing your job as a CISO. I want to go back and ask you that simple question. It's a question I ask myself every day, every week and every month, because I always do reviews. Well, if you want to be a world-class CISO, one of the things you have to start making common practice is daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly reviews. So every day, at the end of the day, I'll sort of step back and say, okay, who is in control today? How did I spend my time? What did I focus my energy and effort on doing? And who was really controlling that? And did I do things that are progressing towards my 1, 5, and 10-year goals? Am I making progress towards those? Or is this putting out fires, busy work, or doing things to help other people, which isn't bad, but am I really helping and promoting myself? And I do that daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly to make adjustments, to be aware. So the question is, just start at any moment during your day. Is what if you actually just step back for a minute and you actually said, okay, for the last hour, for the last 30 minutes, for the last 15 minutes, whatever time segment you want, who was really in control? Was I actually sitting there going, okay, I have an hour in my schedule, and the best, most effective thing I can do to help my company become a world-class CISO and help myself that is aligned with my 1, 5, and 10-year goals would be to do this. And then you actually focused on that. Or was it you were checking text and social, and depending on who texted you or what you did on social, that triggered you to then go off and either fire back text or get upset or get frustrated or get emotional or do these other things or be distracted in terms of what you're doing and what you're focusing on. I know a lot of this, depending on where you're at, when I have these conversations, when I give these keynotes, when I create these podcasts, I often get a lot of pushback. Eric, you don't understand. Things are not like they were in the 80s. Things are different today. You have to accept and recognize it's completely different. People are going to be focused different. There's going to be different. Yeah, I'm fully aware of that. I'm just trying to make you aware of that. Are we actually aware that we, in many cases, as a CISO, we are not in control? We're either putting out fires, we're reacting to emails, we're responding to text. If most of your day is responding to emails, and based on what's in those emails, that dictates what you do, who you call, where you go, and what you work on, or text messages or others, if external factors are basically controlling your emotions, if external factors are controlling, oh, I need to do this or I need to do that. So you get an email where somebody says, hey, so-and-so's computer has been hacked. You need to look at it and see, is this really an incident? Or we're getting unusual alerts on our IDS. And you got to go into the data center and take a look at it. You are not in control. You are not controlling your time. Somebody else is. And you could argue it could be the attacker. It could be the adversary. It could be your boss. It could be coworkers. Whatever level of abstraction you want to go in and analyze that. But that reality is you're not in control. And the question is that a good thing? Who should really be in control? Now, if you work for an employer and you have a boss and you have a boss's boss and they basically control whether you're employed and whether you get paid, because they could technically fire you if you're not performing, then here's the reality. A good percent of your day, they should be in control. They should be in charge. Now, moving from good to great to awesome to world class is all about how proactive and forward thinking you are. So good and great CISOs are not that much in control. It's typically their boss or boss's boss or coworkers or other people are telling them what to do. And that's how most of us are trained. School is very much about who is controlling what you do. In school, you're not controlling. In school, the teacher or the parents are telling you what to do. They're controlling and telling you what to focus on and where to put your energy and your effort. Most of school, you're not in control. Then, when you get home, you then take some control going, okay, the next 3 to 4 hours, I have all this homework and all this studying. Which one should I do first? Which one should I do second? And you hopefully take back some control, and then you plan out your afternoon and evening of how you're going to spend your time and what you're going to work on. But as we progress through our careers and we become more world-class, we should have meetings with our bosses. We should know what they want. We should know what they desire. We should know what's required for us to do our job. And then when we come in the morning, we're controlling our schedule. We're controlling and managing what we do and what we focus on, not somebody else. So the first goal, being world-class CISO, is just gaining awareness. Just getting an awareness of what amount of time you are in control versus what amount of time other people are controlling or managing you. The more you control and manage, the better. Now, here's the reality. In cybersecurity, in being a chief information security officer, in working at a company, who, for the most part, is in control? If we really think about it, if we really want to be honest, and I'm open, like this is open discussion. I'd love for you to post comments. I'd love for you to post details and information. But if we're really open and honest with ourselves, in cybersecurity, most of what we do is controlled by the adversary. It's controlled by the offense. We are spending most of our time playing defense. Okay, what is the attacker going to do? How are they going to try to break in? What are going to be the potential threats or issues? And then we wait for them to break in. We wait for there to be an incident. We wait for our site to be taken down. We wait for a denial of service attack to happen. We wait for data theft to happen. And then we immediately go into defensive mode. So I come in the morning and I think I'm going to work on this project. At 10 o'clock, we get hit with ransomware. Now my entire day shifts. We could argue my entire week. We can even argue my entire month completely shifts. Because now, for the next day, multiple days, weeks, or months, we are actually responding to the incident. So in technicalities, if we're calling a spade, the attackers are really controlling what we do. The attackers are really controlling how we respond. And that's all about reactionary measures. Anything in which you're doing reactionary, anything in which you're doing where you're detecting attacks and reacting to an attack, you're in essence not in control. So the goal of a CISO is we need to do more and more proactive planning, more and more offense on preventing and doing the attacks. Once again, I don't watch a lot of sports, but I love strategy and I study strategy and I know the strategies. A good strategy, if you're playing football, is keep your offense on the field as long as possible and keep their offense or your defense on the field as minute as possible. Why? Because if your defense is on the field, you're trying to prevent them from scoring. Your focus is not on scoring. Now, yes, defense can have turnovers, you can have fumbles, you can have pick sixes. But the primary focus of the defense is to stop the offense from scoring. The defense is not focused on putting points on the board. They're focused mainly on stopping the offense from scoring. If they could put points on the board, bonus, but that's not their focus. When your offense is on the field, your main focus is on scoring points. Your main focus is on getting points on the board. So my question is, where do you want to be spending most of your time? Do you want to be spending most of your time stopping the other side from scoring points, or do you want to spend most of your time on scoring points for yourself? So that's sort of the shift as a CISO when we look at who's in control. The more we're in control, the more preventive and proactive we're being, the more we're focused on putting together strategy that fixes the root cause and minimizes and stops the attack, as opposed to spending most of our time reactionary in defense, stopping the offense from scoring. So just spend some time this week thinking about who is in control, who should be in control, and what are changes you can start to make to be better control as a Chief Information Security Officer.